your company is your first product. You don't need to be very successful selling products, but you can be successful selling your company. You just apply certain basic principles. Being robust is more important than planning. And if you can benefit from changes and you can benefit from the problems that arise from your clients, you're always going to be in a good position to making business and to remaining active in the practice. Great things will come to you if you have patience and if you see things in the long run and try to work out what the compound interest will bring to you. Consistency will help you, but you should not get too obsessed with it because not every problem is actually going to fit in your form or in your CRM or in your Dynamo definition. So some sort of flexibility is required. Professional services firms, consultancies, engineering offices is an area where automation is not going to help us decisively in the next years. The closer we are to our clients, probably we will be able to deliver better value. And also do not neglect the power of no. Saying no is much more powerful than actually any type of scripting, any type of automation that you might implement.
Today we're talking to Roberto Molinos. Roberto combines teaching with his role as partner and managing director at Modelical, a consultancy at the intersection between information technologies, 3D models, and design that provides technology-oriented services for engineering and architecture. We learn about the techniques and theories he's applying to remake his company, why and how he's preparing for failure instead of doing long-term planning, the importance of consistency to make firm decisions for his work, the relevance of sales and promotion, and lots more. Without further ado, let's get started. I hope you enjoy it. Hi everyone. Today I'm excited to introduce you to Roberto Molinos. Hi Roberto.
Hi, hello.
Thanks so much for being here today, Roberto.
It is my pleasure. It's great being with you, Nono. Thank you for having me.
I'd love for you to start by telling us a bit about yourself.
I'm an architect by training. I studied in Barcelona a long time ago. You would call me already a senior, although I don't consider myself one. I also studied structural design and a bit of computation while at the university. And I've done most of my career as a freelance / entrepreneur. I had a short experience working in engineering firms when I finished my degree. But ever since, I've worked on my own. I live in Madrid, where a lot of things are happening in the construction industry at this moment. I think it's a great city to have a mix of business and, let's say, personal life. I'm married. I've been married for 5 years now. I'm expecting a child due in 1 month. So I'm a bit excited about that. I run my own company with some friends. I teach at the university and I try to play basketball every now and then, every time I can. It helps my back a lot, my spine. Basically, that's it.
Yeah, fair enough. I would like to know, what contribution are you looking to make with your career?
I've never thought about that in those terms. To be honest, I've never thought about having very clear objectives in my career. I always try to say what I consider to be the right thing, but in a way that could be sustained over time. And for me, the right thing has always been about using technology for the right purpose and for the improvement of the lives of other architects and other engineers that are dealing with the construction sector. If I had to propose something that can be transmitted, can be conveyed in a sentence, I would say that I like to do a consultancy company that is as good as any other product. I would like to take being a professional services firm as seriously as I can. And that means talking about so many things that are not really relevant or not really common in our industry. Speaking about products, speaking about how your company behaves or how you acquire talent, are things that are typically seen in product-oriented companies, but not so much in professional services firms. And I'm actually working a lot on those lines.
In our previous conversation, Roberto and I talked, and some of the main themes that we might cover today are, one, the thing that Roberto is mentioning right now, that as Modelica is trying to work are a model of companies that try to be a product on themselves, but actually are providing services. Also, the importance of sales and promotion. And then also the two concepts that Roberto is trying to take really seriously to remake his company that are consistency and anti-fragility. So we'll learn more about that. If I can read a quote that you told me previous to this interview, is that you said that Modelical is good at selling Modelical, even when our products are not successful.
Yeah.
What do you mean with that?
We've always been blinded somehow by this Silicon Valley or American way of working, where basically you would just go and create your startup that would sell products, being those physical products or software as a service or any type of software-based products. You will sell those to thousands, if not millions of people, and then you will become rich and successful, and then you would just maybe start another company and they buy your yacht or whatever. But the reality is that we started with that mindset, but we soon realized that we were not going to get there because our sector, our industry is very slow. Adopting change in the construction sector is very difficult. We realized that we might have a better chance if we were a consultancy company or just focus on delivering good services. But on the other hand, in order to provide good services, you will most likely end up creating half-finished products that you will use with your services. Those half-baked products could be just as simple as very complex Excel spreadsheets or very simple web applications or Dynamo scripts. It could be anything, but as far as it is like a small product, something that you can repeat and distribute easily. We thought in the beginning that we will be a services firm, but we will be always trying to create products because maybe sometime we will get lucky and we will get one of those products to become successful, and then we could stop delivering services and maybe focus on products. So far, we haven't been able to do that, and we're still delivering services. But we have this stubborn idea of spending all our profits on creating products. Just to give you an example, if 1 year we make, let's say, $10 of a profit, we spend, $80 on creating products that then we will try to sell our clients on the back of other services. And so far, we haven't been very successful selling those products, but we've been successful selling services that were, amplified by those products. We basically took the decision to, let's think of Modelical as the main product. Every other thing we can do, it's going to be welcomed by the market, by the clients, but it's not so important. What is important is that Modelical is a great product as a company that our partners and our clients want to work with. Our team wants to remain in for a long time. I always like what these guys at Basecamp say, that your company is your first product. The more products we try to create as a complement to our services, and we do that a lot at Modelical, the more we understand that the most important product we create is our company. You could call it culture, you could call it features, you can call it whatever you want, but it is true. If you have a services firm, it is a product. Your logo, your physical space, all that is a product, but you have to take it very seriously. And we try more and more to take it seriously. The way we describe what we do, the guidelines that we have internally, we have a survival guide that tries to explain to new recruits and also to people that have been on board for years. We try to explain how we operate. It's like an instructions manual for a product. How to do things in the company, how to communicate, how to collaborate. We think of it as a product. But at the same time, we try a lot to create products that help and support our services. And we do so by spending a big part of our profits year by year on creating little things and bigger things that we think will help us sell more and deliver more value to our clients. We create products of different types. We do products on Revit add-ins and we have a Dynamo package. We have several web applications that try to bridge the gap between the existing tools and the kind of data management our clients need. And as I said, we invest heavily on our own products. Recently, we have actually started to implement a product culture in the company. We have designated a head of product. We are creating product guidelines. We are going through a rebranding process to help us convey the products. But the reality is that we are not really good on selling those products directly. And maybe it's a good thing, because what we do is we sell our services on top of our products or amplified by our products. And the clients are really keen on purchasing or working with us because they understand that we have this mindset that whenever we see something that can be improved by means of an automation or software development, we will do that, and that they will get that value together with the services.
Why do you say that when a services company works, it works as a playground?
Because in a services company, you never run short of problems, right? You're always trying to fix new problems for your clients. Each one of those problems, it's an attraction black hole, so to speak. I have so many ideas, or we have so many ideas for things that could work as products to help our clients. I'm not exaggerating if I say that we have 10 or 20 or maybe 100 ideas for startup products. But we try to take it as a playground, saying that we can do whatever we want, in the sense that we can put our focus on trying to solve specific problems that may cater 1, 2, or 10 clients. And whenever we see a group of our clients sharing the same problem, we just try and go and fix that problem jointly. And that is a very exciting way of working. You work on your own devices, you work on your own resources, what you would call bootstrapping your own projects. And you probably never get too far, but it's a very exciting way of working because basically you have no bosses, you have no commitments in the long term. So you can just decide where you want to go every month or every quarter or every year. And I think that is very valuable these days.
And how do you think that financing your products changes the way that you would develop these services or products in comparison to having external investors?
I do believe that unless you have a strong product culture in your company, which is hard for a services company or for a services firm, unless you have a strong product culture, you basically will end up digressing. And we didn't know that in the beginning. And we have just recently started having our own product managers and product unit, to be clear. Financing or funding your own products, it's good on one hand because you are the main client. But on the other hand, sometimes you'll be too loose on your side because you are the one developing the solution. So you will be permissive with your developers, with your product managers. So on the one hand, it's a good thing because you're actually solving your own needs. But on the other hand, I think we are more professional when we have to solve other people's problems by creating products.
What habits have worked best for Modelical in selling and promoting your product?
The thing that has worked best, as you would expect, to keep it very simple. If I had to make a map between the lines of code in the products that we have created so far and the success those products had, there is an inverse relation. The more complex, the more features the product has, the less likely it is to be successful. I'd say that our most successful product is a small add-in we call Deja Vu, which is a kit that allows you to create your own Google Street View for your Revit and Rhino and Navisworks models. So you can link 360 images from within your BIM models. And from a development standpoint, it's probably the simplest tool we've ever created. It's probably, 20, 30 lines of code plus a very basic file server on Apache, and that's it. And it's being used by hundreds of people in all the projects that we are running at the moment. Whereas we've created super complex, super advanced products in Unreal or in Revit, and those are being used by 1, 2, or no people at all. And it's actually frustrating. So I think the best habit for us has been simplicity. The second habit for us has been engaging the client soon enough, because enterprise clients are really tough. It's way different from consumer, right? The way they see software, the way they approach buying software. So for us, the second habit that has worked best is engaging the client soon enough and making them part of the description of the specification process. That has helped us be more successful when the product came up and when we finally ship it. A third habit is actually being very close to the problems of the client and make them see that we can develop solutions that are beyond our initial scope. But that doesn't ensure us any kind of success when it comes to actually ensuring that the client uses the product.
In what cases have you seen that engaging the client at a later stage has not worked?
This connects with consistency. We had a very important client in the beginnings of our company life back in 2013. We were working with that client around BIM and around design technologies. But we came to learn the way that this client was actually working or creating proposals. And whenever they had to create a proposal, they would just try to compose a lot of CVs, which were created in Word, in .doc. And they had to create project data sheets that were also created in Word format. And it was a daunting task. It seemed like a nightmare because every time they had to change any logo or any little piece of information about the competition or the proposal they were running, it was a super manual task. So we proposed to them, we think we can fix this. And then we went and we created a solution from scratch. But we didn't engage them too much. We just thought we knew what they wanted. And we, instead of creating a solution an ad hoc solution for this client, try to sell it to them, and then maybe if we were successful, try to make a spin-off or create let's say a more general product and sell it to a wider audience. Instead of that, we went straight ahead to try to sell it to the general public. And we neglected, or we were not very, let's say, careful about solving these client problems and engaging them profoundly. When we finished the product and we went to them and we presented the product to them, they had so many demands and so many requests for features that were not in our roadmap and that were like a no-brainer for them, that we ended up not selling the product to this client. It was actually our original client. So we realized that we had to engage the client soon enough and a lot in the initial phases of the development and the definition. At the moment, that solution is fully in place or fully functional in Modelical. Is something we use for preparing our proposals and CVs and portfolios. And this client, I think they remain using Words because basically that's what works for them. It's a pity, but I take full blame on, and I feel guilty for that because it was all our fault, not them actually. And we lost the money. Of course, we spent a lot of money on that, but it's okay. We learn a lot as well.
In what way do you think that pricing your services is important?
It's super important. But we haven't been very successful in trying to sell those products as a standalone thing. The guys who can price the products properly, I think they are magicians. We are really bad at pricing our products. The best way I can put this is that if I try to sell you Deja Vu, for instance, which is our simplest product, and simplicity here has proven to be a very guarantee for success. I think we're good at pricing our services. I can give you an example. I think it's an illustrative example. Is that if I went to you and say, no, I'm going to sell you this piece of software. It's called Deja Vu, and it basically allows you to have access to all your photographs of an existing building from within your models. That's going to speed up your modeling, your existing conditions modeling. That's going to allow everyone in your team to know what's going on. It's going to allow you to keep the level of detail in the models very, very low. It has many advantages, and it's only going to cost you $1,000 per year. It's pretty much what Struct On-Site or HoloBuilder does, right? But it's going to be cheaper for you. If I try to sell it to you, you will probably have to go to IT or purchases or get some kind of clearance from your CTO to buy it. Whereas if I add it as a perk or an add-on to our services, you probably will be very happy and you will be able to use it without getting any kind of permission from anyone. And actually, we will be able to charge more because we will be selling you services on existing conditions modeling or laser scanning or some sort of surveying. And on top of that, we will just add Deja Vu because it helps us actually do the work and it helps us deliver the service to you. So for us, it's very hard. We have hard time pricing our solutions. And we have hard times selling our solutions, which are based on products. It requires a completely different type of HR structure, narrative, quality levels as well, and customer support. But we are, I'd say, decently successful selling services that are amplified by products.
You've mentioned a bit the techniques that make it easier to sell. What channels do you use to sell, or how do you sell? How do you find that sales end up happening? Well,
sales it's a very important thing for architects and designers. I'm sure the audience out there are doing it pretty well, but it took us a lot of time to learn how to do it. I wouldn't say okay, I would say just a bit better. We understand that there is a process. It's a process that you cannot map thoroughly or mathematically to a system, but there's a process nonetheless. We understand that there's a process for capturing leads. There's a process for nurturing those leads, and you have to be patient till the moment where that lead or that company or potential buyer is ready to purchase services or products from you. I heard this talk from the former head of business development at Big that said that only 5% of your leads are ready to make a purchase at any given time. So you might be speaking to 100 people, only 5 of them will be ready to buy something from you at that time. So it's very important that you keep speaking to everyone. And when I say speaking, you keep throwing webinars or sending value their way. You can do that in many ways. You can just have a very honest conversation about anything. You can just have a webinar. You can just send some article or guideline that is valuable to them. You can just help them make a decision, be like a sounding board for them. But that doesn't mean that they are going to be able to buy something from you at that very moment. But you have to remain available to them. So it's a process that goes from having a client that is knowledgeable about you to having a client that is both knowledgeable about you and ready to buy something. He realizes that he needs something from you, right? And it takes time, and patience is extremely important. Having the right tracking methods is important. Of course, we use a CRM that is important for tracking what's going on in every company. Most of the sales will start as a PR thing, as something that you have the relationship, you have the connection, but then it's a group effort. And then once the client is ready to buy and request a quotation, you have to be ready to just answer that quotation swiftly and promptly, right? With enough words, not creating like a super convoluted proposal, just something that goes straight to the point. And we also have a statistic that says that if you have a client that is waiting for your input, for your proposal, and he's ready to buy, the shorter and the quicker, the faster you can respond, the better. We do have a map that says that you either get a positive response from the buyer in, let's say, 2 to 5 days, or it dies out for weeks. So it's very important to keep that in mind. If it takes you 1 week to respond, you're probably just lowering your chances unnecessarily.
Can you elaborate a bit on what CRMs are?
Tools that allow for tracking and treating opportunities, leads and opportunities and sales as you would do in a BIM model. You would define as stages, for instance, where in our case we have leads about someone that might be interested in your services, but you don't know them actually. Then you have qualified leads, where basically you have just discover about that person, his role, his purchasing power. You know if he's interested in your services. You know him somehow, maybe at a fair or at a webinar. You have something in common, even if it's just a brief second. And then after that, you're gonna be educating that lead. You're gonna be throwing value their way. We have several ways of doing this. You can have guidelines, you can have webinars, you can have videos. Any type of valuable content that you create is a good tool or a good weapon to educate potential clients. And then you have to be available, right, for them. You have to have meetings. You have to be able to track those meetings and the outcome. And you do that all in the CRM, where basically you have this, in our case, we have this Kanban board where you just go qualifying and moving the business around. And CRMs there are at least dozens of solutions out there. Some of them are standalone, like Sugar CRM, just to give you a name. But the most famous one is Salesforce, right? Salesforce is creating a Fortune company on top of a CRM. And they are working with thousands of companies, but probably there are many more that still need a CRM properly in place. I've seen architects do CRM using just an Excel spreadsheet, or using something as simple as Contactually or Pipedrive, but then you can have a very complex sales team that needs to be supported by a equally complex CRM.
What format works better to distribute your content and attract clients?
For us, the thing that worked the best has been we create our internal guidelines. We create them in Google Drive, in Google Docs. We think of them as a very collaborative document. Basically, everyone can jump into a guideline and improve it. One time we decided to start publishing those guidelines in our website. We hacked a very simple script that from WordPress, it reads the Google Doc and shows the content on the website. It's amazing. I mean, the amount of traffic we have in many of those guidelines. And we have a constant influx of leads that are interested in our services coming through those guidelines. Recently, with the lockdown, we also use a lot of webinars, and it helped as well. But I'm sad to say that what works best still is just having a good, honest conversation with a potential client. They know you, they get to know you, they get to understand about the team. And then you create like an atmosphere for them to trust you with those articles and those resources that give you some sort of authority, technical authority at least. So for us, I'd say, just to summarize this part, is that whatever worked best for us is approaching a client physically, or let's say more on a human terms or in a human interaction, but making sure that person is affected before and after the encounter with some sort of technical content or technical authority coming from our side, be it in the shape of webinars or articles or guidelines of some roundtable or classes. That's what works best for us. I do not believe that's going to remain the same. We have to become more and more, say, independent from having someone specific, myself probably, engage with the client. But On the other hand, I think it's a good thing that we still rely so much on the human contact and human interaction to gain clients.
How do clients find you?
We do have an influx through website. It's not super relevant. If you look at it from a financial or revenue point of view, it's relevant and we're happy about that. It's growing step by step. I'll give you an anecdote about that in a second. But the biggest influx comes from referrals, right? You try to work your best with a client, and then that client either recommends you to another client, another friend that is working in another company, or more likely that it happens more than you would think. It's that person moves to another company and takes you with him, wants to keep working with you. The best way we get clients in consultancy is through referrals, and the more people engages with the client in Modelical, the more opportunities for getting referrals. So that's something we're working on at the moment. It happened to us that in 2018, I was traveling. I took almost a month off with my wife to travel around the East Coast in the US. So I was a bit disconnected from the company. That was actually a good feeling at that time. But it happened. I would check my email every 2-3 days, and I would check on the website. I don't know, every 10 days. So almost at the end of the trip, I check on the email. I check on the website. I check on the form that we have on the contact form responses. And there was someone from Disney, and the notification email hadn't come through. And nobody knew in the company that we had just been contacted by Disney through the website, Disney Imagineering. And it had happened 7 days ago, something like that. So we hadn't responded to the client in what I was thinking a acceptable time frame. And I went nuts. I was so pissed off because I thought that kind of thing shouldn't happen. And I don't know what happened. Basically, the contact form stopped sending emails, and we lost track of that person. Luckily, we could just reconnect with the client and have a nice conversation and get to know a bit more about each other. But basically, we almost lost the contact with Disney because of a computer problem. I was really pissed off about that.
And how do you think the COVID era is changing how Modelical is selling?
It's changing on two directions. It's changing we're losing too much contact with our clients, and that is no good. At least speaking personally, I like to go and fly and see my clients wherever I can. My head of business development would do the same. And now we've been locked down since March. We haven't flown to see our clients. But on the other hand, our clients are being more and more receptive to speaking about certain things on a camera or a microphone. They would just prefer to do face-to-face in the past. So we are taking it serious. What we're going to do in the future is we're going to make travels and trips and flights count a lot. We're going to make sure that if we go and see a client, that's going to be a great experience for everyone, for our client, for us. And we're going to make a difference if we see them face to face, right? It's not going to be like another meeting could have happened over Teams or over Google Meet. We're going to take them as workshops. We're going to take that as an opportunity to discover more things together, right? And this is something we're working on at the moment. And we're just making sure that every trip we take counts and makes a difference.
Can you elaborate a bit more on what you mentioned before, that also apart from sales, there is an important promotion component?
My feeling is that sales in professional services firms should not exist as a very standalone department. My feeling is that every professional running or working at a professional services firm, as a consultancy like ours or an architectural office or engineering office, should see themselves as a sales agent or as someone that can drive business. Of course, the most important way of driving business in consultancy and in design engineering is actually to do a great job. That's the single best way to keep the business going on. You do a good job, you engage properly with your client, you have an honest relationship with them, they will call you again. But we should be conscious about that reality. We should understand that our client is inclined to make some decisions after certain things happen in your project, that it's not only about providing an extraordinary technical response, but also how you communicate, how promptly or how swiftly you respond to the needs, how clear you are in conveying your decisions or your results. It's not only about doing just the right thing in technical terms. So if everyone understands that in an organization and understands that there is a strong sales component to everything you do, I think that our firms would be much better off. right? And our bosses will be happier and we will earn more money and our work will be more meaningful because you will be delivering more value to the client. And what is more important, you will just be in a position to decide not to do certain things, which is very important in design and services because your time is your most valuable asset. So if you have a business-minded relationship with your client, you can say no to many things. That's actually a better thing, a better outcome. Not doing things sometimes is much better than doing whatever is needed. And in my experience, that's only possible when people understand that they are solving business needs to the clients, not just design needs.
As far as I understand, I think even from before the COVID situation, that you're trying to remake or rethink the way Modelical is working. And I believe there are a few books that you've been pondering on for the past months that have helped make some of the decisions that you're trying to apply to the company.
Yeah, we have one mandatory book, High Output Management, from Andrew Grove, the former chairman of Intel. It's a very brief management book. It covers almost everything. And I'm sure there are MBAs out there that are less valuable than this book. So basically, every senior at Modelical has to read this book. And it covers, as I said, many things, from sales to planning to HR to appraisals, everything you can imagine for an average company. It's more of focus or more oriented to product companies. But nonetheless, it's still a worthwhile read. But lately, speaking around the concept of planning, I've been reading a book that helped me a lot change the way I was planning. It's Anti-Fragile. It's a book that has been out there a lot these days because it's by a guy called Nassim Taleb, who predicted, some sort of described these unlikely events in his book called the Black Swan. He somehow predicted or described the economic meltdown on 2008 and 9. And now he's been very quoted. His books are really relevant these days of unpredictable, unforeseeable events. But he has the book is a mess. It's long. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to read, hard to follow. But it's really creative. It's really new. And if you take it from a management point of view, it's really new. It offers you a fresh look into management. And basically, it says that you should not worry about what you cannot predict. I don't know if you're going to be making 0.5 or 0.6 more money in 2 years. And I actually cannot predict that. I cannot design a company to do that. But basically, what it says is that instead of worrying about things you cannot control, you should worry about things that would make the outcome of those changes irrelevant to you, right? If you have an armor, some kind of protection that is strong enough, you don't have to actually guess how strong the punch is going to be because you're going to be able to sustain it. So taking that into the management or into the planning scope is a huge change, right? Because instead of trying to do things for a certain milestone so you're ready for uncertain events, what you have to do is you have to acquire habits in your company that make those events irrelevant. So if in the future, for instance, something comes and makes the economy in Spain completely a complete disaster, then you can switch to working in other countries. So how ready are you to do that? Or if you cannot hire anyone in the next 6 months or 1 year because there's no way you can pay for that and then you have to outsource, how ready are you for that? So if you take your planning in terms of acquiring those habits, it becomes much simpler because it's actually about changing the way the company operates and not just reaching a moving target.
Can you name an action or a sample strategy that you will take to get prepared for failure?
Yeah, for sure. For instance, we describe these habits as things that we would like to happen in Modelical every day, something that would describe us. The simplest could be like we can work from anywhere. And it's not just about having a laptop and having a good internet connection. It's about actually being in a position where you're not going to see your colleagues in, let's say, 1 year. And the quality of your work has to remain the same. Your ability to create business and to drive businesses has to remain the same. So we are getting ready for that. We're getting ready for a situation where we are not going to see anyone else in 1 year. We're going to be in lockdown. And then if we don't have lockdown, it might be better for us. We might be in a better situation because of that. But nonetheless, we will thrive. We will just excel if we are in lockdown. Another habit we want to acquire is being able to use our knowledge no matter what happens. If we can stay together, if we can have workshops and look to each other in the eye and socialize our knowledge, that'd be great. But if not, even so, we have to be able to use our knowledge, right? So we have described all these habits that basically means that we shall be able to work in any country, we shall be able to work in other markets, work from home or work from anywhere. We shall be able to use our knowledge. We shall be able to use our infrastructure. Our infrastructure has to be resilient, has to be always available. So we might have options. We describe them as options that we need to keep open. Another important one is we shall be able to shut down the company in just 1 week and that bit. So if something happened to us or we just say, okay, let's call it off, we don't want to keep working, we shall be able to shut down the company having no debt. For instance, we do not have any debts, any financial debt in Modelical, and it's very important. At least for my peace of mind, it's very important, keeping it simple, just to shut it down.
How would you prepare for failure, for instance, from the point of view of capital?
The only way I can prepare for that is actually saving as much as possible, being very thorough about the way we use the money, and being very strict about what money goes in, what money goes out. Accounting is like the basic thing you need to know if you want to run a company, for me. Accounting tells you about if a company is earning money in the proper way. It tells you where the money is going. It tells you how efficient you are on your capital. So the way I did this in the past is actually being very strict about accounting, having double accounting always in the company, like having 2 persons looking into the accounting at the same time and now we run it in real time, and it's really good for us to making decisions.
Yeah, so the first time I heard about the term anti-fragility or anti-fragile was in a book called The Coddling American Mind, I think. That book talks a bit about unrelated things. It talks about how we're over protecting young students and young children and how that is impacting their lives, because then later they don't develop the necessary skills or strengths that will make them behave as adults. Mm-hmm. Just been looking a bit into this book since we talked, because you mentioned it. I have a quote here from the book just for whoever doesn't know about the term, and maybe that helps clarify. So it says, some things benefit from shocks. They thrive and grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stressors, and love adventure, risk, and uncertainty. Yet, in spite of the ubiquity of the phenomenon, there is no word for the exact opposite of fragile. Let us call it antifragile. Antifragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The antifragile gets better. To summarize a bit or to add to the conversation, I think the concept antifragile can help us set habits for the short term and daily ways of working rather than thinking long term and trying to predict the future.
Yeah, I'd like to say that you don't have to go from fragile to anti-fragile. You don't have to get obsessed about that. It's probably good enough if you become robust, try to be robust in every area, and then try to become anti-fragile in some areas. That is much better than being anti-fragile in one area or in several areas and remain fragile in others. I mean, there's a bit of a continuum here, right? Just if you set up a work from home solution and infrastructure, then you becoming robust. But beyond that, if you create the right environment where accountability and autonomy actually help the team become better and work better, you're actually turning your team into something more anti-fragile. But I don't think you can become anti-fragile in many things until you've become robust enough. So first, focus on being robust, and then try to become anti-fragile in those areas.
For the work I do as full-time job, we were allowed to work remotely 2 or 3 times a week. We could work from home already. So that actually was a strategy that we didn't foresee, but for the fact of having to make the entire company work remotely in, as you said before, like in 1 week, that actually was a huge impact, because suddenly, also because the matter of working with computers lets you do that without seamlessly. But it was a big, how can I say? Yeah, like having a silly thing of having the VPN software already installed in your machine and just suddenly one day say, okay, today I'm just going to stay home, and tomorrow and the day after that. And there is no real friction to that process.
Yeah. There you are being robust. Now, any improvement that you are experiencing from the fact of working from home and making everybody more accountable and more independent in the way they do work, that is anti-fragility, right? That's basically you improving because of you being exposed to this unforeseen environment. And I'm sure that when you go back, if you ever go back to normal, you're going to retain some of those benefits, some of those traits, right? You will not like to be told what to do every time, or you would not like to be sitting in a meeting room for hours. Instead, you would just say, okay, why don't you just record the meeting and I will have a look at it later? Why don't you just send me the transcript, right? That's going to be better for everyone in the organization. And that is anti-fragility.
Nice. What about other books that have also influenced your decision-making process?
I'm reading now Thinking Fast and Slow from
Daniel Kahneman.
Yes. It's very funny or enlightening, right? It has implications both for your personal life and your management life. It says that we run by two systems. System one is the system that works. You cannot turn it off, and it's always thinking, it's always working, and drives almost every decision in your life. But sometimes it is monitored by system two, which is like the actual thinking self. And if you look at it that way, it helps you understand many ill-fated decisions, both in personal life and in corporate life. And it also introduces this concept of consistency, where basically in the absence of truth or in the absence of beauty, your brain would substitute that truth for consistency. And when the brain cannot see truth, if it sees consistency, it will think that something is okay or something it's preferable because it's consistent, even if it's not right. And it was like a shock for me learning that in the book, because we put so much effort into consistency here at Modelical. We spend so much time into keeping things consistent among different projects, among different business areas. And I'm not only talking about the formats that we use for presentations, but also every template that we use for running projects, the way we do reporting in the projects, the way we speak in different projects. We have so many processes that actually force us to be consistent, that it makes me think if we are not replacing truth and beauty for consistency, that we are maybe paying too much attention to consistency because it's kind of a substitute for the real thing.
What do you think are some trade-offs that you're seeing of being consistent?
Well, it's a huge effort. Especially if you don't see the benefit, and I can imagine that junior members in my team will not see the benefit because they don't see more beyond their project, and they don't understand that if they report in any way they want, or if they don't save the file in the right location, that someone might not be able to use that document or might not be able to use that piece of data to create a new proposal or to solve their own problem in their project. It takes a lot of effort to make them understand that consistency, it's important and it's really useful once you are confronted with a complex decision, or you have to make a complex proposal that you need data from other past projects. If data you cannot aggregate or it's not accessible, then you're missing the point and you're going to make mistakes. Consistency is very expensive. It's a very energetic activity, but then it saves a lot of energy in the long run. In our business model, I think consistency plays an important part, the way we operate. So in the long run, I think it's worthwhile. Then consistency also removes some of the responsibility and offload it to the system. Since the system already tells you how to do things, how you have to report, you might be at ease on how you report things. And it might not be okay for that project. Maybe a certain project needs to be reported some other way, or needs to be presented some other way, or needs to be analyzed some other way. But since consistency is put in front of many other things, you might get this kind of, laziness about speaking up and saying, okay, why don't we do this thing differently? And it also takes a lot of effort just try to avoid that kind of laziness.
I think the way you're talking about consistency, has a lot to do. It's different, but I think consistency has a lot to do with automation. a process seems to be, automated in some way when a set of decisions have been already made about how something is going to be processed. And I think when you have templates in place and you have, I don't know, systems to store things or how to name things or whatever conventions, or I'm understanding consistency here as the way to do things. Those might be automations, templates, conventions, or things like that. But I think when those shine the most is when you've been using them after a while and you give them for granted and then they break. And then you realize all the things that you have to do manually, all the extra decisions that you need to make. Like even from a PowerPoint or a presentation template that you need to decide where to put the title, the font size, and many other things. So I always have this thing that there is always going to be data projects or something that you have to deliver that doesn't fit the template that was created before. Might be the process that you follow to document a project or to present it or to talk about it. And that's something that you say, okay, I'll automate this process, I'll forget about it, but then you'll have to come back to it at some point because you will have an outlier, some project that will require custom representation or just a custom way of storing its data.
I think the role of automation in design technologies and for designers is still to be properly analyzed or properly understood. I'm not 100% sure that we're always improving things from a financial or standpoint or from a time standpoint. What I'm trying to say is that when you automate something, in speaking specifically about design technologies, when you automate something, you are not always saving or earning time. What you actually do is you are just buying peace of mind. And it's extremely important, this peace of mind thing, because if we were to analyze how much time or how much gain we got from automating a certain task, we would be surprised that many times it's not as much as we think. But peace of mind for a designer is extremely important. It's a bit philosophical or psychological, but it allows you to keep working on all the things. If you know something is in order, it's settled, then you can work on other things. And it's something that people will buy. Why do we buy insurance? Why do we have insurance on our houses or our cars when maybe we would be better off just paying for the damages? Why? Because we buy peace of mind. The same thing happens with a lot of automation and a lot of consistency that we put in place, because we know we are going to be more robust or more prepared for whatever comes. We know that we're going to have outliers. We're going to have instances and events that will not fit into the script or into the automation or into the Dynamo graph, but we will be ready for 80% of them. And I think it's also very important. We are neglecting more and more the role of peace of mind in how we make decisions. And the problem is that it is very hard to put a price tag on peace of mind, because peace of mind for you might be something completely different than peace of mind for me.
Regarding insurance, I also think you're buying into a given process that is already set on how it has to be done. So you sign up for a company that already will drive you through the process you have to follow if something happens, right? So otherwise you'll have to spend more effort in making decisions on your own, looking for how to fix something or how to recover from that problem that happened. And also in terms of the peace of mind, I think what I'm experiencing is by automating processes, you save some time. It's not clear how much you're saving, because many times you might save an hour from, on the specific case of what I'm thinking about right now, like sharing something on social media or formatting things that get formatted automatically. I think we also gain more bandwidth to make decisions along the day. So like you don't have, for example, if you think of a calculator, you might not save a lot of time by not making a few multiplications or some additions or some things. But if you delegate that task to the machine, then you don't waste that thinking power that you have, that is a limited resource in some way in your day-to-day.
100%.
There is a book that I'm thinking about that's called Scarcity, that is about how there are different things that can deplete your thinking power along the day, or things that might attract your thinking power, because I don't know, and I'm super summarizing this, but things like the person who doesn't have money is going to be focused all the time on thinking about money, right? So the fact of getting money might not be just to get money to pay for things, but also to have that peace of mind that you're saying that money is always going to be on the back of your brain, because you have a scarcity of money, and you're going to have to be thinking on, oh, I need money. And that's going to clutter the amount of thinking that you can do in other endeavors.
I think if there were a drug that allow us to make all the decisions you wanted in one day without depleting that kind of bandwidth, I think I would take it. I've never done drugs, but I do feel that we have to make too many decisions about the business or about a project or about hiring or firing or promoting someone. I get exhausted. And I know there must be some kind of a physiological or a neurological response to this or theory to this. But the amount of decisions, the number of decisions you can make on any given day, I think it's limited. And I do believe that successful people are capable of making more decisions in one day without depleting their bandwidth. Those decisions don't need to be right decisions, right? Because they might be making mistakes. But being able to make those decisions fast, or not fast, but just make them instead of postponing them, I think it's a sign for, I don't know if success or at least the ability to run a successful business.
You mentioned before that saving time might not be such a huge gain. What do you think would be the right way to use the time we save?
Well, certainly for me, this automation promise hasn't worked, because if I get to automate something, there's another problem coming my way. So I always end up going home late. I haven't been able to use the saved time for playing basketball or being with my wife or going to the cinema. I think you have to enjoy it. I get back to this peace of mind thing. It's like it's not only about you doing the right thing and saving time and being efficient. And a word that I have here written down for me to discuss today is optimize. I hate this word, optimize. You have to be able to enjoy it a lot. So if you're going to stay 8-9 hours a day working on a problem, you have to be enjoying it. And sometimes it's just a matter of 1 hour, 2 hours of well-spent time on a problem, and that you can get it fixed, right? You can get it solved. We're now focusing more and more at the company on gaining the experience and the maturity to work less. And the best way we can think about that is try not to do something, not try to do it very efficiently or to optimize an already optimized task, but just try to remove it completely from the landscape. Just try to remove it completely from the scope that we have with the client. And it has worked really well. So I always say that saying no on time is much better than saying yes 10 times. It will save us a lot of clutter and a lot of problems.
Yeah, I agree. I have also changed the narrative of how I refer to things or how I like to think about my process. I've tried to remove the words productive and efficient. And I might be wrong, but at the moment, I'm really liking the word effective. So effectiveness as opposed to productivity. And that's because effectiveness, so being effective means you know what you got to do, what you don't have to do as well. And you use your time to meet those goals as fast as possible and as well as possible, instead of saying, okay, I have 9 hours ahead of me and I'm just going to spend all this time being really productive and efficient and optimizing my processes. That's even more true since I'm working remotely all the time, working in a different time zone than my team, and also trying to juggle full-time job with my personal projects.
My take on that is that I've been able to squeeze the work it would normally take me to do 5 days into 4 days, but just trying to remain focused, not wasting time on unnecessary goals, not trying to get disrupted or interrupted by other colleagues, just saying no to certain meetings at certain improper times. And it feels so great that you've done the work of 5 days in 4 days without actually going home late or having to do any strange thing. And then I would take that day or that extra day to go to the mountain, which is one of the things I like to do a lot, is go hiking with my wife or with some friends.
And what are some of the ways of framing your workday that allow you to do that?
It always was having like a milestone at the end of the day, something you're not gonna be able to bypass with more work after it. I said, tomorrow I'm going to the dentist. No, I know that if I go to the dentist at 6, my day ends at 6, and that's enough. Other things at work is actually I try to create blocks of activities, 2-hour blocks of activities. So I say, okay, today I'm gonna I'm going to have these 3 main activities. I'm going to dedicate 2 hours to each one. So that I tend to do that on the weekends or on Friday. So that way my mind is somehow getting prepared in the background to start those activities. And I always leave some buffer time between them because shit happens. Foreseen events come and you get calls and you get meetings and somebody requires your attention. If any given day I manage to do 2 or 3 of those blocks, which accounts for 4 or 5 top 6 hours of good work, I am super happy. There are days where I can do that. And there are other days where basically it's impossible for me. Another thing I try to achieve is having a couple of days in the week with no meetings at all, just to have a clean schedule. I think that's a luxury these days, but no meetings in there. It's a silly thing, but I used to think that it would be rude just to say no to a meeting for that reason. But the reality is that the person on the other side doesn't know about my diary. They don't know about my schedule. So in the end, it's actually better because I have those couple of days every week where I can do whatever I want. I don't have any staples in the calendar, in the schedule. And then I can plan on my own. And that has been great, especially during the lockdown, where when we had so many meetings, I would just take a couple of days a week with no meetings at all. So try to concentrate there. Beyond that, I don't have so many tips because I have to be honest, I like a lot what I do. It's the best thing I do. It's not that I am good working, but I am a super good tennis player or basketball player. The best thing I do in my life is my work, is my passion, is what I do. So I don't see why I would not like to spend 1 or 2 more hours doing it.
What changes do you foresee in your life after having kids?
I'm sure I will stop wasting time a lot. I digress a lot. I will arrive to the office and try to start with a task, and then I will get distracted by another task, and I will get distracted by another subtask of that, and it will take me 30, 45 minutes to actually start with the intended activity in the beginning. I'm sure, and I really hope that if I have kids and I have to make it back home, or I have to just pick them from the kindergarten or from school at a certain time, I will be able to delegate better and get less distracted by, let's say, peace of mind activities. I will let you know in 1 year, 2 years, I will let you know. I'm sure it will be a big test for me.
I don't really know how he calls it. I forgot now, but Cal Newport uses what he calls like limited time productivity or something like that he actually forces himself to work for a set amount of hours and actually finish the day, I don't know, for example, at 6 or something like that. And apparently he was able to do that even before having kids. So he tried to accommodate for working that way, which is what you said before, right? Like having a limited amount of time or maybe be more effective in certain hours. But I think that's super hard. I think for real humans like us, we have to wait until the thing happens, which is bad. I tried to adjust to be able to do it in that way. But I think until the real thing doesn't come, I don't know, I think that's a really human thing. Like until the real problem or the real thing comes, we're not able to fool ourselves.
I like to learn more about the connection of that with creativity. When you are between tasks, does it help you be more creative? And in my life, creativity is not about design, probably. It's about how we approach certain problems that we have in the company or how we try to solve our clients' issues. But I do feel that constant change in context and having to actually put your focus actively on certain topics, it's a hard thing, but at the same time, it helps me because it gives me like this multifaceted approach to things. It's not that I'm thinking linearly about a topic and I start from 0 and I end up in 1 and that's it. It's like I'm constantly visiting all the things I have to do. And I think that helps me, but probably it also hurts me in other ways. I would like to learn more about the connection of context switching and multitasking with creativity. Not with actually delivering a project, with probably something that probably needs a lot of focus, but also about being able to see a solution, at least intuitively. For me, I have seen so many issues in my professional life that when I'm presented with a new issue, I have this cognitive problem that I tend to see the solution right away. And many times it works, but other times it doesn't work. I don't know how would it be if the spectrum of my solutions were smaller. Going back to the topic, I do hope that I can remove 50% of the distractions once I know I have to be on time at home. Otherwise, I'm going to have a really hard time.
And talking about that, you mentioned about creativity. When do you think you get your best ideas on, or what conditions make you the most creative?
When I am presented with issues, and in my case, creativity means providing a fresh look at a problem that my team is facing or a client is presenting to us. I do not think there's a connection between being well rested. I do not think that there's a connection with having spent 3 hours on the problem. I would say it's more like a eureka moment for me. It's like you see the facts and then you get like an instinct or an intuition about where to go. And then you either confirm or you try to dismiss that intuition. But for me, it's actually, if it doesn't happen in the 5 minutes after you are presented with the issue, it normally takes much more than that. But I'd say that being a design technology consultant, as we are, is a very creative process. Very creative. You have to think so many ways to solve problems. And most of the creativity, I think, it also comes from the fact that you are given a lot of authority by your clients, by your partners, by your teammates, in the sense that they expect you to come with a solution. And that sometimes is actually enough for you to be able to come up with something that is sometimes good enough.
How did you get to having more than 30 employees?
My life is much easier with 35 employees than it was with 15 employees. Much easier. I try to comment on this using an analogy with flying your own plane, right? When you are flying a small plane, you fly in visual. You have to keep an eye on all the instruments at the same time, and you have to keep an eye on the outside, on the meteo, and on everything. Whereas when you fly in a bigger plane, you cannot rely on keeping an eye on every instrument. It will just overload your cognitive system, right? So you have to rely on instruments. You have to rely on reporting. You have to rely on alarms. You have to rely on your co-pilot doing the right thing. And of course, you will look through the window every now and then, but it will basically be for just contemplating the beautiful sight, not just to guide yourself. So in our case, switching or passing the 20 employees barrier actually meant flying instrumental. And of course, we will have much bigger problems if we were 100 or 200 or 2,000, but we will still be flying instrumental. We cannot rely on our guts or on our instinct for everything as we would do if we were a smaller company. So I'd say that it might be different for everyone, but if you're looking at scale, and scale in services means having more people work under predefined procedures, sharing common knowledge, owning the brand and owning the projects. If you're looking at growing, I'd say that there is a sweet spot. There's an inflection point or a sweet spot where you will feel much better, right? The more people you have with you, it will become easier. There's a point where it becomes hard again, but I don't think we are near that yet.
And how was the step from 1 or 2 people to growing to a company?
Well, it was crazy. We had I don't know what happened to me in the beginning of 2013. We went from being 3 to being 10. I mean, in just 2 months. That's 300% growth that by Silicon Valley standards is the kind of growth you want to see on a small company, right? Again, I'm joking about this because we are a services firm, no capital, no venture capital, no outside investment. But we went from 3 to 10 in just a couple of months. And we didn't do the math quite well. There were a couple of payments that were postponed by our clients. So actually I had to go to the bank and extend some credit to the company. That's something you can do when you are growing from 3 to 10. But now we wouldn't be able to do that, right? Now if you have a problem, you cannot just jump on a parachute, right? You have to just land the plane, or else everybody will get hurt. The first chunk or the first step was, let's say, of a risky movement, but it ended up working well. And then from 10 to 35, it has been very organic. We would just take people one by one, doing a very thorough recruiting process where we have very clear steps, and we try not to fool ourselves, say, no, this guy is good, just hire him. No, we just go step by step and we involve many people in the company, and we always hire anyone thinking that person is going to remain with us forever. So we don't take anyone just for single projects or for a specific project scope. We just think that person is going to remain for us always. And it gives you a very different outlook when you think that way. Okay, this guy might be nice or might be good for this project, but do I see him like a lifelong business partner? And if not, it's a no hire. I'd say we've been lucky to sustain very little attrition in the company. Turnover has been very low. So that is also very important in a professional, knowledge-based company like ours.
Do you consider your life simple?
No, I don't. No, I don't, because I'm always messing around with the company. I keep always the company, and besides I do teach at the university. I teach a lot of classes. I enjoy it a lot, but it's demanding. Of course, beyond work, my life is very simple. But if I take work, I'm trying to work in so many fronts, doing so many things in the company, running so many products at the same time, so many projects, keeping them in so I wouldn't say it's simple, but it's exciting. It's exciting. I'm not yet at a point where I would long for a simpler life. Not yet. I'm sure it will come, and my family will help me with that. But so far, I'm having a lot of fun. I wouldn't like it to be any simpler. The places where I would add simplicity would not have a direct impact on all the stuff, and they wouldn't allow me to just do all the things or live a more relaxed life. I have to make decisions about funding our projects, about hiring people, about this style we want to have on running certain projects or how to engage with certain clients. Sales is also making me work a lot. But if I had those covered, I would be basically spending more time on development, on learning new stuff. So I don't think it would be more relaxed.
And do you have any habits that are maybe like 30 minutes or less that you do every day that help you out with your day?
I think I don't. I like checking on everyone. It's amazing how much you will learn about things that are going on. You just check on everyone. That's something you can do because you're the boss, basically. I'm just encouraging the team to actually try to do the same thing with the rest of the team. I like to plan my day ahead. Then the resemblance between my plan and the actual outcome, it's really nothing. Right? But I try to plan my day. It helps me understand the priorities of the day. But also understanding that things will happen and I will be distracted. I will be dragged outside my plan. But beyond that, I do not meditate. My exercise habits are nothing but regular. I like to play basketball or do some kind of sport every week. I am at an age that if I don't do it, I miss it. My back hurts. My focus suffers. My mood is worse. So I can see more and more the importance of sport and exercise for having a balance, a good professional life.
And what do you understand as work-life balance?
On a selfish point of view, it's like, for me, the balance means being happy with what you're doing, like feeling that you are pursuing your passion and you are being truthful to it. On a less selfish point of view, which is basically because you don't live alone and you make your life among others, I'd say that the work-life balance would be not missing anything important because of work. I'd say that I haven't missed anything important, but yeah, maybe I work too much. I'm transitioning to actually working smarter and not so much. But let me just stop here a little bit. It's like, it's very easy to say that what we need to do is work less and work smarter. But who teaches you how to work smarter? Who teaches you how to solve problems smarter? I only know one way, which is actually doing stuff. And I do believe that with time, you will become smarter and you will be able to solve your problems faster and smarter. But it's not such a cognitive exercise that you can decide, okay, I'm going to be smart today and I'm going to solve my problems smarter today. There are problems that you cannot solve easily if you want it so hard. So the only way I can think about it is actually saying no as a heuristic, say, I'm not going to do this. So you are just actually saving you both thinking about the problem and actually solving the problem.
How do you define success?
For me, success is actually not wanting to do any other thing. For me, success is actually staying committed to walking down this road, and not to switch to other business, not to switch to other type of work. For me, success is about being patient. So success could be like being patient enough to let the compound interest of the things you've done return to you. We tend to be very impatient about what we do. We want to see the outcome. We want to see the return in 1-2 years. And I don't think anything valuable, anything that you would call successful will come to you unless you're patient.
Can you think of something that you've wanting to do? Right? One of those things that you're saying success is wanting to do what you are doing. Have you had one of those moments where you think, I should be doing this, or maybe the next step is I'm going to go and do this other thing?
Let me get back to the question about success, right? Success is actually, for me, I feel successful when people that could be working elsewhere choose to work with me, choose to work with us, and choose to follow us and to learn with us. And I do believe that because when they are choosing to work with us, they are choosing not to do many other things. So that makes me feel successful. And when they remain with us for 5, 6, 7 years, that makes me think that we've been successful. And successful as well, in very anti-fragile terms, is actually being able to adapt. Maybe not to grow too much or grow too little, maybe to adapt to what is changing out there. And so the more we stay in the business and the more robust we become, and the more sound advice we can give to our clients, I do feel more successful as well, because we are robust. We can remain in the business, and we have means and weapons and reasons to remain a business, a healthy business, one that allows the team to build a life around, earn enough money to have their whatever they want, and also feel valuable as a team to the clients, to the buildings that we're creating, to the infrastructure that we are helping shape. That is also really fulfilling. No, I think there's this reward in solving problems that you cannot find in almost any other profession.
Who are some of your role models?
I do look up to the guys at Basecamp. These guys started as a services company, design company, and then they created the Basecamp application, and they went on to be very successful. I also like them because they are outspoken, they are provocative, and they have an understanding that they try to share with the rest of the world about the way businesses should run. And you might not be able to get to the moon if you follow their advice, or to build very complex companies or very, very big companies if you follow their advice. But at least you will be able to build a sustainable, successful business. The guys are Jason Fried and David Hennemeyer Hanson, DHH in Twitter. I like them a lot. They've been, some of the decisions we've made as a company have been slightly influenced by them, with all the due distance between us and them, of course. Not as a role model, but as a reference for us when we started the company. We took the example from Case, the consultancy firm that was eventually acquired by WeWork, and that was actually a great reference for us in many ways. The way they approach consultancy, the way they approach the company as a product, how they grew on top of services that they were actually providing to WeWork and others. But what would show was basically their products, their addings. So yeah, we were influenced by them. And speaking about personal role models, I'd say that I've had a couple of professors that influenced me a lot in the decisions. And actually, you realize that if you hadn't had that conversation with that professor, probably thinking about my professor Andres de Mesa, who is he's the one that taught me about geometry and about first steps in programming. But it's funny because if I hadn't had that first conversation with him about parametric design or about geometry, or if I have ended up in another class in the university, I might not be here. So there's a big role in chance in everything we do in your professional career, I think. But on a more domestic scale, I have to say, of course, that I admire my high school friend and classmate. He funded Modelical with me in 2012. And my wife, Sarai, who is also my partner and a colleague, and she runs a very important part of the business. She's in charge of all the BIM stuff and the operations. And I like about them that they are really constant and they are really patient with me, and they support me in almost every decision I take. which is I cannot stress enough how important they've been for me to be where we are.
It's funny. I just Googled on my website just 37 Signals, and I have a post from 2014, something talking about byproducts. But I followed the guys at Basecamp like 6 or 7 years ago, and they were actually a really big influence as well on the way I frame my projects and the things I've done. And they managed somehow to create really successful products always. And as you said, some of their byproducts or artifacts have been like books and resources and ways that people can probably learn about them, but also learn themselves to how to apply the concepts they have applied to their companies.
If you look at 37 Signals Basecamp, they've been in the business for more than 20 years. Yeah, I think it's 20 years or maybe a bit more. No, I think it's 2005. So it's 15 years. I don't know. I think it's 20 years. We can check that online. And the reality is that if you do something for 20 years as a company, as an entrepreneur, you either enjoy it or you're good at it. And if you're lucky to actually be good at it and enjoy it, then it's you're unstoppable. And these guys, they are rich, they are successful. They launch Hey.com, which was a big hype. No, it has been a big hype. But they have a saying. And in this world where everybody's following each other, having something to say, it's super important. It's like the best marketing strategy you can have.
I just Googled that. So 1999, they co-founded 37 Signals.
For 20 years.
David wasn't there yet. So it was Jason Fried and two other co-founders.
There's a bit of a survivor bias here, right? Because they were partially bought or partially by Jeff Bezos, and they got a lot of money from the guy. Although they trashed him recently on Twitter because Bezos was like playing cards with the Amazon headquarters. And you can see a post by DHH speaking about what is it like to buy your first Lamborghini. There's a bit of a survivor bias because nothing you can do, even if you do everything right, even if you do everything following their advice, it doesn't mean that you're going to end up having your Lamborghini or actually having your house in Marbella and be able to and have your own Le Mans racing car team as he does. But
yeah,
so it might be, I don't know how to say, frivolous, right? But at the same time, it's something that will give you always a second thought. Right? The way they approach enterprise, the way they approach software, they have this contrarian thinking that I think is really necessary nowadays. Think for yourself.
What would be your message to the world?
Building our tools is what makes us human. So build your tools. Create your tools. Don't complain so much about the tools that you're given. Just work on improving them.
Nice. I have a few questions from people who work with you that I happen to know because you've put me in touch with them at different times. One says, what excites you? What makes you cry and get goosebumps? Do you cry, and if this happens often?
Well, it's a very good question because I would get those goosebumps whenever I felt there was a intellectual connection with someone in the middle of a problem solving process. So if I was explaining something to you and then I realized that you were understanding me and you were understanding how cool what we were discussing was, I would get those goosebumps. To be honest, it's been a while since I last got those. So it's been a while, but every now and then I'm facing a problem with a client or with a partner and we get to a solution together. So I think it's really hot be able to solve problems with your team or with your clients. And the more geometry and the more mathematics in the problems, the bigger the goosebumps. Basically, what gives me goosebumps is actually solving hard problems where there's a bit of mathematics or a bit of geometry together with the team or with my clients or with my friends, actually.
How was the first office of Modelical?
It was a butcher shop. I lived in the outskirts of Madrid, and there was this mid-low income neighborhood next to where I was living, and there was an old market kind of abandoned, or at least there were no many posts, no many units open there. So the units were rented as working spaces. You would find a drums academy. You would just go and learn to play drums, or you would there would be a tailor shop, something very cozy and very very simple. And then we found this space was clean, was good, and was really cheap. So we went there and we started there. And actually, we kept the letterhead, we kept the billboard on carniceria, which is the butchers. It's butchers in Spanish. We kept it for a while. on the outside, and it was really fun. I really missed it a lot. I mean, it was actually very small. We would fit only 4 or 5 people in there.
When you mentioned that you were gonna have a kid, you talked about reading a book of data-driven parenting.
Everybody has an opinion on how to raise kids, right? That's something I learned because everybody either has been is a father or a mother, or has had niece, or at least has parents. So everybody has an opinion. Everybody has done it. It's probably one of the few things that everybody does, and it's a complex thing, right? Not just like eating or sleeping or going to the beach. And the reality is that I'm going to be a father, and I'm not super young. I'm not the first in my gang to become a father. I'm not the first in my group of friends to become a father. So I've seen a lot of things, a lot of my friends doing things in one way or another, and I'm not judging them. Every way works out because every way ends up with the kid being kind of happy and working more or less. So I'm with my data-minded or just consistency-minded approach. I thought I'm sure there could be guidance on this, and I found this Crib Sheet. It's called Crib Sheet, the book. It's by Emily Ulster, and it basically looks at the data of what happens if you do one thing or the other to your children. And it's really interesting because it actually demystifies many of the complexities of becoming a parent that I think will be harder once you are deprived from sleep and the baby keeps screaming and crying all night long. And I'm sure that my judgment is going to be hindered by that. But I would advise anyone thinking about becoming a father or actually being in the process of being a father just to read it. Because your wife is going to read so much. She's going to read so much more than you. If you have to read one book, I'd say just read that one. It's going to give you an edge.
We will link to the book on the show notes. So I've got all my questions are done. So we got to the end. And I just wanted to ask you if you have any last thoughts, any questions, any comments, anything that you will like to share.
I would like to thank you for having me in the podcast. I realize that you've been doing this for a long time now. I salute you and I congratulate you because of having the patience, having the dedication to doing something, even if it's a simple thing, right? I'm not saying that running a podcast is a simple thing, because I know you put a lot of effort after that, and you will edit it and you will just clean it and remove all the noises that my computer does. But if you have the energy and you have the vision and tranquility to actually do it for many months, years, then I think it becomes a superpower. I'm sure it will allow you to meet interesting people, create an audience base, many things. I'm sure great things will happen to you. No, and thank you. So thank you for that. Thank you for making me part of that. And I just want to take these final lines to underline the importance of patience in whatever we do. We have to be very thoughtful and knowledgeable about what we're doing, but it is compound interest what we will get us there. And so don't expect to do anything great in 2 years. If you have sheer talent, that might work, but if you don't, just play it in the long run with compound interest. Just keep doing it, whatever it is. I'm sure it will blossom.
Yeah, thanks, Roberto. I think just by seeing this interview and the process that we've covered to get it done, I have been able to better connect with you, and that's happened with many other guests. I think I've already talked to, maybe 40 something people for the podcast, many of them not released, some of them will never be released, some of them have been released. But yeah, it's definitely surprising in some way that when I was younger, I think I had more ease to let go of projects. That's something that is also a skill that I think as we grow older, we have a harder time letting go of projects, and we also get in love with some projects. So I keep accruing small bits of projects that I think I want to stay with me for the long run. And I accept that at some point I might say, okay, I have to stop and give up with this one to focus on this other one. But I'm trying to, as you said, put a lot of effort in not the editing and the process that is tedious, but in the automation or at least creating that consistency that you mentioned before. So the process of creating the content is the hardest thing, which is what it should be, and not the process of editing, sharing, and distributing and all that stuff. Thanks so much for all your knowledge. I think it's been the first interview that we focused a bit more on business in terms of sales, promotion, and you have a lot of experience in terms of running a company for real, having it grow and maintaining it and looking thinking long term to make it something real and sustainable. So I think a lot of people will enjoy it.
Thank you, Nono. And I'm open to the discussion. I'm really looking forward to speaking more about the business of design, the business of running your own small company, services company, and making it be a healthy enterprise, something that will sustain your lifestyle, allow other people to work with you, working on interesting problems everywhere. That is one of the beauties of our profession, right? And design in the built environment is like you can work anywhere and you can really affect the life of others. If we want to keep doing that in the long run, if we want to have the opportunity to design, to automate, to learn, we need to make it a healthy business. And I see there's still a lot to be covered and learned around that topic. And if I could help with at least opening some eyes or raising some concerns, I am more than happy to having been here with you in the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much. Where would you point people if they want to touch base with you or connect online?
I think Twitter is a good place, or LinkedIn, but they can always reach me at roberto@modelical.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Roberto, for your time and for being here.
Thank you, Nono.
I hope that we can have more conversations in the future, maybe shorter episodes or some other conversations around specific topics.
Of course, if you think about running or starting any other formats in the podcast, you can count on me. Next time in Malaga, okay? We'll meet in person in Malaga.
Yeah, we'll try to do it in person next time.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. This was one more episode of the Getting Simple podcast with me, Nono, and Roberto Molinos. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.